Elvis is without a doubt one of the most, if not the most, impactful musicians to ever live. And to go with the legendary career that Elvis had, he was able to inspire generations of musical talent that came after him. In this video, we'll discuss some notable musicians that were a fan of Elvis that got the chance to meet him, and even one that was a fan that did not want to meet him. Mind you, several musicians got the chance to meet Elvis. This is only a select few. Perhaps the most well-known instance that Elvis met a musician was when the Beatles got the chance to meet him. It was the late summer of 1965 that Elvis in Los Angeles invited the Beatles over for a visit. Now the story goes, there was some initial awkwardness between the Beatles and Elvis until Elvis said, "If nothing's gonna happen, I'm just gonna go to bed." Instruments were brought out after that, and all then began to play. The story can be a little conflicting because there was no filmography allowed, there was no press allowed, it was just the Beatles and Elvis. There was a story that said that John made Elvis mad with some sort of comment, but then Elvis was joking with John back and forth. They were even imitating Dr. Strangelove together. We know the meeting happened, we just don't know what all happened inside the meeting. I know it was private, but geez man, someone had to have recorded that somehow, some way. I refuse to believe no one recorded it. The late Tom Petty had the opportunity to meet Elvis when he was only 10 years old and was starstruck by it. It was the summer of 1961 and Tom's uncle was actually working on set on the movie Follow That Dream with Elvis. Albeit Tom was only 10 years old, a simple nod and a wave from Elvis was all he needed. Who can forget the verse from Free Fallin', saying the girl's crazy about Elvis? It's fitting because when he was a kid, Tom was crazy about him as well. Whitney Houston, one of the best voices in the history of music, much like Tom Petty, was able to meet Elvis when she was a kid. The quality is obviously not good, I do apologize, it was the 1960s. There was some history there already between the Houston family and Elvis. For a while, the Sweet Inspirations were the backup dancers for Elvis, and in the Sweet Inspirations was Cissy Houston, who was the mother of Whitney. Whitney recalled meeting Elvis in the 60s as a child backstage. He was wearing his mink and he came in. She was more so starstruck. He was just there. She was looking at him in amazement, couldn't really think of what to say, so she didn't say anything. That, my friends, is aura. Elton John, much like the Beatles, grew up in the UK and was a massive fan of Elvis. Elton would quickly realize as a kid that he was reading these magazines and this one person kept sticking out more than most. He looked so much different than everybody else. It was Elvis. Elton John's mom would bring home a new record every Friday when he was a kid, and he remembered the one time he heard an Elvis record, him and his mom were both blown away. Elton John did meet Elvis one time in the late 1970s before Elvis passed away, and Elton said he looked sad and pathetic and it wasn't the same Elvis, and it was a wake-up call for Elton to get off the drugs quickly, otherwise it would take him like it was taking his hero. Despite attempts for them to meet, Bob Dylan did not want to meet Elvis at all. Bob Dylan, much like John Lennon, did not want to meet the 1960s movie actor Elvis, but more so would like to meet the 1950s Red Hot version of Elvis. They never did get a chance to meet, but Bob did say in 1977 when Elvis passed away, he was so saddened by it he didn't say anything to anybody for a week. David Bowie, believe it or not, almost got the chance to work with Elvis. The story goes, Elvis was so impressed by Golden Years from David Bowie that he had actually called him up and asked him, "Can you produce my next album for me?" David was said to be an Elvis Presley encyclopedia. He knew everything about Elvis, he loved him, and they both shared the same birthday, January 8th. It was also said that David Bowie wrote Golden Years with the intention of Elvis to perform it, but that never came to fruition. What a historic collaboration that could have been. One common theme in regards to everybody in this video is at one point they were all massive fans of Elvis, and even some got into music because of Elvis. To me, the most impactful musician to ever live.